Thanks for coming. Recording in progress. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this talk slash workshop. It's a little bit of interactivity, not a super workshopy workshop, somewhere in the middle. Who am I? Okay, Drew, you gave a really good intro for me. I wrote it, but your narration was way better than I was imagining. Well done. Thank you. I forget I do all those things. Yeah, I've done all these different roles in tech. I've got all the hats. I like learning new things, and each time I guess I want to get more and more responsibility, and I keep growing that way. Lately, I'm a consultant for my own company. I like to sing and dance and blow bubbles. Sometimes I'll have bubble parties. I have a crate or two of bubble equipment. I go to the park and put it all over, and then anyone walking by will blow bubbles with us. This week, I'm actually in New York City. I'm at a friend's apartment right now. My partner Brian and I are taking a musical improv intensive class all week. We're making up musicals on the spot without preparing at all. So that's singing and dancing. This is like very Casey. I'm having a lot of fun up here. Uh, oh yeah, I wrote a book a few years ago during the pandemic. I had a little bit more time than usual, and I took a sabbatical, and I finally got it out of my head. Maybe we'll touch on this if it comes up for the content. I'll mention it later. I run a company, Happy and Effective. It's mostly just me. I help tech companies be more happy and effective by doing like assessment and coaching and workshops and team consulting, that kind of thing. I'm an indie boutique consultant, not a cookie cutter one, so I don't come in with a predefined plan. I like talk to people and figure out what's going on and help them. But I'm only one person, so it's different than a big company you'd hire for this. Today, we're going to talk about two different parts. There's two halves of this talk. It's going to be about half an hour and half an hour each. The first half is about evaluating cultural fit, seeing what makes a company or position a good fit for you, and should you stay or leave at your current company if it is a good fit or not a good fit. And then the second half, we're going to talk about culturesmithing. That's a word I came up with. It's like changing the culture at your company deliberately by doing a lot of thoughtful, proactive things. This is going to have a lot of concepts, and I don't expect you to master all of these. It's like really a lot. I'm going to give you idea. And there's so many ideas in here that you can dig into later if it's interesting, whatever piques your interest. And to make that happen, I have a reference doc. Maybe I should put this link in the sidebar right now, actually, so you can have it up so you can not worry about it. Here's that link. And when there's articles in this document, there's a whole bunch in here. It's a few pages long. When there's articles or items in here, I'll mention it in the slides and I'll point to it. So you'll know, oh, I'll look at that later if I want. I used to be a teacher, so I have homework in here too. Some homework. If you choose to work on this and figure out like how well your company fits you, I have some like assignments that you can do on your own later too. The reference doc looks like this. I took a screenshot with the left sidebar open so you can see there's like a lot of headers. If you want to use that sidebar to navigate it, you can. When I give you homework, the slides are blue, and they're also listed in that links in that notes doc I wrote there in both places. Everything's in that notes doc. I give you a really thorough homework. All right, without further ado, let's get into the content. Evaluating cultural fit, the first half. Uh, so to start, I want to ground us in what makes you happy at a certain job. My favorite framework for this idea is this term ikigai. Have any of you heard of ikigai? Give me a thumbs up in the chat sidebar if you have, or thumbs down if you haven't. Okay, maybe emojis are actually hard in Zoom. I forgot. Oh, that one. Yeah, do that one. That one. Where's that button? Um,
That one's down. That's under the reactions at the bottom of the panel.
reactions,
Zoom.
bottom panel. Great. Cool. Okay. Thank you for interacting with me and giving me thumbs up and down. That helps me with my pacing and know what to cover or not. Every audience is different. Anyway, ikigai is a Japanese concept. Um, and something is your ikigai. It's like the best possible thing that makes you the happiest and all this stuff. If you have all four of these criteria, the yellow at the top is what do you love? Green at the left is what are you good at? On the right is what the world needs, and the bottom is what you can get paid for. There's a lot of things that you can't quite get all four. It's really hard to get all four, honestly. In your current job, you're like 9 to 5, most of your income job. How many of these four do you feel like you have lately? Put that number in the sidebar chat. One, two, three, or zero, one, two, three, or four. I hope it's at least one. Or One or two, three, two. Yep, yep. Cool. Yeah, it's a range. I hope someday all of you get to a four, but it's hard. It's really hard to find that sweet spot where you get it all in balance. I like that framework a lot. Those four are pretty good, but I also like to think in my own mind, how would I define my own happiness? So, for example, money, when I did this once a few years ago when I was switching jobs, I thought to myself, money and impact, social connection. Social connection, you notice, is maybe not in Ikigai. It's not one of those four main ones, but it was important to me. Learning is another one that wasn't in that, but that's important to me. And having support. Oh yeah, if I don't have support, supportive colleagues or supportive managers at work, that makes me super unhappy. I don't know where that falls into Ikigai. But anyway, you can think about it for yourself, and this is one of the homework assignments. What makes you happy at work? So we're not going to do this one right now, but for later, I want you to think about this. What made you happy in the past? What made you unhappy in the past? What would a dream job look like? What would a nightmare job look like? And with all those things together, you can come up with your list, like I have at the bottom here. I always wish we had more time. If we had like 2 or 3 hours, I would have everyone do these workshops and da, 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 da. And I do this for companies, but not for the meetup. It's just 1 hour here. I just want to give you the overview. All right, moving on. Next one. All right, so now you're probably very curious thinking about the last slide. I know that's how it goes. It's very interesting, hopefully. You got to think about what's important to you. You'll come back to that later. Next concept here, cultural fit, not cultural superiority. It's like a phrase that I say a lot. When you hear the phrase cultural fit, you might think the way the companies use it and say, "Oh, we didn't hire this candidate because they're not a cultural fit," which is a hand wavy thing to mean like, uh, we don't know why, but we're just not accepting them, and there's not a good reason for it, and maybe it's bigoted in some way, and it's not a great phrase when the businesses use it. But I like to flip it and use it for us. The company might not be a cultural fit for us, the employees. And then it's a powerful term that I really like. I want companies to have the right culture that employees are going to be happy working at and effective working at. Um, there's a whole field of organizational effectiveness. There's like PhD programs for IO psychology is one, and there's a whole bunch of related ones. One of the studies categorized big tech companies and similar companies into these three categories: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. And they're differently effective and they're differently happy. The generative ones on the right, that's like very good. People love it. They get a lot of work done. Bureaucratic is maybe on the neutral side of the range here, and pathological power oriented, it's in the title. That's not good. We don't want to, most people, except maybe the winners at the very top of that, maybe they like it. I don't know. But most people at those companies are not happy and they're not being very effective either. So if you want to read about more about this later, if one of these three types resonates with you, your company might be pathological or bureaucratic, check out the article that I linked to in the notes. Westrom's organizational culture types, these three. There's a great article on the Google SRE blog, and the original paper is very interesting too. That's all we're getting for this one. It's just a high level. Okay, next time. Next idea. There was a great article about the toxic traits of companies by MIT Sloan, also linked to in the notes. So there's like these 5 things that are just bad. If your company is abusive, bad. We don't want abusive companies. If it's cutthroat, no, 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 we don't want that. Unethical, obviously, we don't. Non-inclusive and disrespectful. Like, if your company scores high on these, it's just a bad work environment. I don't blame you for wanting to leave, and it's not fulfilling your needs and your ikigai, and you're not happy working there. The article that goes into this explains the whole process and some nuances, and I think it's a great article. I recommend if you want to dig into that later. There's a related article kind of in an article series about what predicted attrition, people leaving the company. And number one here, toxic corporate culture, was by far the biggest predictor of people leaving the company during the Great Resignation time period. The 10.4 there means 10 times as important as compensation, which they use as the baseline. Of course, people will quit and change jobs if you're going to get paid more. And then how much more important are these other factors or less important? Toxic culture is just, look at those red lines. It is huge. And it's also like, duh, if it's a toxic environment, of course nobody wants to work there. Right. Change over time. I'm gonna go back to you thinking about yourself. Here's an example of how happy I was at work. Just like scale of 1 to 10, how happy I am. I didn't do the different ikigai factors for this one. Um, at the beginning, I was maybe what is that, a 7, and then it went up to 8, and it's like going up and down over time. COVID hit, of course, it plummeted. It went way down. I was not happy at work during the beginning of COVID. Eventually, though, I got a new manager, and I thought, wow, this is an opportunity for change. Maybe the new manager is awesome. And they weren't as awesome as I was hoping because the organizational culture around them didn't let them be as awesome as they seemed to be or seemed to want to be when they were getting in there. And then I crashed and left the company and switched jobs. Um, I have these in my head are in 3 different zones. If it's high enough, if you're like near a 10, obviously you just want to stay. It's great. You're perfectly happy there. It's awesome. And if it's very, very low, like a 1, obviously you want to leave. And then there's this awkward zone in the middle. You don't know if you want to leave or not. Maybe you're waffling. Maybe it goes up and down across the line over time. Uh, so I recommend for myself, if I'm in the question mark zone for too long, I'm starting to look around to try to find somewhere that I'm happy enough to want to stay instead of not being sure if I want to stay. Some people, though, if you're in a different situation in life, maybe you have like a mortgage and kids and you need the stability more than you need being happy at work. You just struggle through it and you're in the question mark zone. But if it hits the red, you're going to do something anyway. Like everybody there, your line is in a different spot, everybody. Um, so I wonder if, I don't know, if you feel like sharing, if you feel comfortable sharing in this chat, in the sidebar chat, say if you would stay, leave, or question, where do you feel like for your current job? I don't expect everybody to share it because if you're in the question mark or leave, you don't want your employer to know. Hard stay. Oh, I'm glad there's at least one. Yeah, good, good, good. Mm-hmm. Cool. Right, a lot of question marks. Well, 2 of 3 people said question marks. That's a lot for our small group here. Right. I'm not going to have you do this one live right now either, but for homework, you can say scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the worst job you can imagine actually having. Like you're not literally going to go work in the mines and get coal, like lung poisoning, whatever. But your realistic worst job you could possibly imagine having, and your 10, the best job you can imagine having. Where are you on that scale lately? Where has it been for the past few jobs, maybe the past few months or years, if it's changed over time? And maybe make your own graph like the one I was making. And I like to do this maybe monthly. Sometimes I'll have a calendar event for myself and check in 1 to 10, how am I feeling lately? So I can kind of track it. I don't always do it, but when I'm in the question mark zone, I'm thinking about it more. That's when I really want to track the data. Because if I'm languishing in the question mark area for too long, I really want to know. All right, let's say you're in the question mark zone and you're not sure what you want to do. Or if you're in the leave zone and you don't know where you want to go to, we're going to evaluate a few of your options. Another activity that you can do for homework later, but I want you to get you thinking about it right now. What are like brainstorm widely, have a lot of options. What are all the different options you have? You could stay in your current role as is if you're happy. That would probably be your default option there. You could stay and try to make it better, like change the culture of the team. You can try to actively, proactively work on it. That's the second half of the talk. We have a lot of ideas for that. Another option people don't think of is an internal transfer. Sometimes you could switch managers or switch teams or switch role or title and maybe have a completely different experience in the same company with the same stability and relationships and everything, the context. So that's a nice option people don't think about too often. Or obviously switching to different companies. And you can go with a whole bunch of different companies you can go to add this out to your options. It's not just one option like stay or leave. Like your options you have to evaluate on their own merits. There's a whole bunch of different avenues you can approach. Here's an example of how I did it. That one time that from that same story with the COVID, I was saying, should I stay at this company or should I leave? And all the columns here, world impact, personal growth, uses my uniqueness. Those are my personal variables that I was evaluating options on. And the rows here were my options I was thinking about. Do I want to do university research or work by a grant or do some tech consulting? A lot of my options you'll see in that blue column on the left are pretty similar, 33, 34, which was true. That's how I felt. But when I did this exercise, at least I could tell why one was higher than another. I could look at this, say, oh, right, the support. They wouldn't have support for me in that job, I think. Da 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 da. And the clearest thing in this whole exercise was how much I was not happy staying in my current job. You can see how low that number is. Oh dear. And when I did this chart, I was like, I have to leave. Wow, I'm not just question marks. This is like a I should leave moment here. All right, we're right on track for my timing. We covered the evaluating cultural fit half of the talk. Now I want to open it to questions. But I haven't covered anything yet about how you can change the culture at a company you're at. That's this next part we're coming to. But anything about evaluating your cultural fit at your current company, that's the questions I want to hear. Feel free to unmute or ask your question in the sidebar chat.
Thinking about this framework, Casey, like how long did it take to come up with a framework like this and to go through that exercise anyway?
I think it was iterative. So in a way, it maybe all happened at once when I wrote it down finally for a talk, or it happened over the course of 10 years because of the combination of my experience. It was very gradual.
Hmm. Would you say it's something that we should do on a regular basis, or just when we realize, hey, I've been kind of grouchy at work for like the last few weeks. Maybe I need to actually sit down and do this.
Yeah, I think for most people, practically you're going to do it in a response to your grouchy situation. That's what's going to motivate you. It's like how people say, "Oh, I should exercise and meditate and eat healthy." But like it's not until you have sleep apnea that you're going to do some of those things or there's something really motivating you. If you do have the discipline and structure though, or if you're a manager and you can help your employees have that structure because you can provide that in your one-on-ones or quarterly, annual, whatever reviews, I think it's a really healthy practice, just like those other ones, to ask yourself these questions. Um, and there's even an technique. I don't think I have an article for this in the notes, but if you remind me later, Drew or Judy, I'm happy to find it. There's an
Hmm.
article that explains what a bunch of questions you can have for a stay interview. It's the opposite of an exit interview. Like, how could I keep you stay at this company, happy and working here? What do I need to do and change? And so that's like the same kind of idea. It's in parallel to this. How happy have you been? How is it changing? What can we do to change the trajectory here?
That's really cool. My old boss did that for us. The people were starting to leave, so she called in people from the newest person hired to the person who's been there longest in order. And she said, "How do you feel about things? Is there something that we can change to make sure that you're comfortable and stay?" And it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. But I have a question
Yeah.
also. That spreadsheet that you have, I evaluate my decisions on spreadsheets, everything. Even my kids' college, we did spreadsheets and we weighted things. But I found when I was looking for jobs that I was putting companies and I would have like salary, management, blah, blah, blah. I had, I don't know, maybe 8 columns and I had weightings on them. And I put the companies across and I multiplied everything and came out with a number. But I found that I knew all along what I wanted to do. And you're a psychology major, right? And I felt like I was really like I would like change the weightings because I think I knew subconsciously what I wanted to do, and I had to make myself prove to myself that I wanted to do that. And I thought that was
Yeah.
just a really self whatever experience.
And it's so
Um,
cool, Judy, to meet someone else who does it this way. I do it exactly the same way.
yep,
Honestly, it's not an evaluation tool. It's not a magic 8 ball that tells me what to do because I came up with all the columns and the weights anyway. It's all from
yep,
me. It's
yep,
a tool to help me articulate my thought process or to discover like my gut feelings and why I might feel that way. Your subconscious is what I would really trust
yep.
more than the numbers. Um, and it also helps me to have a narrative when I was leaving and I talked to my coworkers who I really liked and got along with, and they were like, "Why are you leaving?" I wasn't just like, "Eh." I was like, oh, I need support. I need this, and I didn't have it, and I had it before, and now I don't have it. And like, I came up with a really clear narrative, and that helped me be comfortable being confident in my decision and explaining it to people. And when I wrote an exit letter, a 2 page, like, y'all are doing this great, but this should be better over here. Like, I was really articulate in that. Like, this thought process I think it's really helpful.
Very cool.
Yep. As a product manager, I often pull out the spreadsheet, and at first, half the team is like, "Why? What are you doing?" And by the end, everyone's like, "We love it," because it's just facilitating us making our. It's not like I'm coming at it with numbers and we're going to decide based on these. They're scared of that, but it's really a conversation discussion tool for the team. And a lot of teams I've done that on still do it today. Like I'll see someone in a meetup after a meetup at a bar, we're hanging out. They'll say, "Yeah, we still do it, Casey." Oh, it's kind of touching. Anyway, that spreadsheet template is available. It's linked to from the notes if you want to check out that template. I have a weighted version, unweighted version, whole bunch of options. Feel free to use it. Just a tool. I think it's called matrix-based prioritization is one way I describe it. Any other questions on this last topic before we go on?
I think they're eager to hear the next part.
Yeah. Good, good. Michael Porter. I know Michael Porter from high school, but there's no way it's the same Michael. I mean, it's possible, actually. We're LinkedIn friends. Welcome, welcome. All right, next topic is culture smithing. Everyone influences culture. This is specifically for like individual contributor engineers, not for C-suite executives, because we don't have as many of those attending the tech meetups in the area. They have more power, but I'm talking to the people who are here, what you all can do on your smaller teams. I'm going to cover a bunch of principles first, and then I'm going to go through 30 concrete actions, like bam, 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 bam. And some of those, hopefully you say, oh, I should do that one. That's my goal for those. All right. This one I do want to do because I think it'll ground us really well. So in this, we're going to ask you to write something in the sidebar chat. Think of a time when you or someone else on your team tried to change a social norm at work. And I don't care if it was successful or not. I don't care if you did it or someone else did it. You can say a friend did it. Like for an example, I'll give you an example from me actually. So when I joined the government job I was at, USCIS, I was product manager. Nobody had lunch together. I switched from being remote to going in an office, and I was like, I'm gonna have so many work friends. It's gonna be so awesome. And they didn't. They weren't social. But eventually every new person, I would have them have lunch with me, and then they would keep doing it together and with me, and we would have lunch in the lunchroom. We'd go out to a restaurant, like quick restaurant and eat. So all the new people did it, but all the old people were like, no, I'm gonna have a smoothie at my desk. Very like crotchety and not social. So I changed that gradually, and that was successful that time. Anyway, I'm gonna be quiet for a minute. I'd love to hear an example, whether it was successful or not, of a norm, a social rule, social pattern that people do that you tried to change at your job.
Can I read Judy's? I'm gonna read Judy's. Facilitated postcards from people who recognize when someone. Oh, okay. Recognizing people by Judy. Was that like exchanging postcards, or would you all
Yeah,
like?
no, so I had our artistic person create these cards. Yeah, kudos cards. And yeah, and we distributed them, and I think I'm the only person that wrote them, but at least that helped. I don't know that anybody else used them. I do see that the company, this is a former company, uses our little logo that I created, so that's good. But
Yeah, for that example, the kudos cards, it might not have that practice might not have lasted longer, like people making the cards, but people kudosing, they might be continuing more celebrating things like publicly in Slack or privately in Slack or at meetings or whatever. You probably nudged kudos at the company.
I oh, Gina, do you feel like reading yours, or should I read it?
Sure. I'm currently trying to teach the product people at my company to reach out to the engineers to ask how they should build the things that they want instead of just giving us a PRD and then saying, this is how you're going to build this thing that I want. I'm starting to finally see meetings where the product person is like, hey, I want this thing. Do you guys think this makes sense with the way I've thought the user experience through and given AI?
Cool, cool.
Mine is totally silly. We were at I was at a small startup, and this is like we were so small that we didn't really have any sort of a network aside from like a Netgear home Wi-Fi router for our stuff. So we could put Chromecasts everywhere. Every Friday, this one guy would come in, and before he came in through the office, he would play Rebecca Black's Friday, and he would cast it to the TV. Every The best one was when he would come in, like the song would start to play, then he would come in through the office door, like an announcement. I I know. I took that and turned it into I didn't torture my teammates with Rebecca Black, but I tried to just like share an interesting music video on every Friday. And I saw them picking up that torch when I left. They're like, well, now that Drew's not here, I guess I'll start putting in music videos.
Yeah, I
Small.
love it. And that changed the vibe of the Friday? Like people were happier? Like what kind of effect did that have?
It was almost like a day without sunshine, or like missing your cup of coffee if you didn't get the music video. It really it
Yeah.
was like and two, sometimes I would forget. And at like 2 in the afternoon, when someone would make some noise, they'd be like, well, since Drew's dropped the ball, here's my input. So people would start putting in theirs.
Good, good. Yeah.
It
Sometimes you
was
have to drop
fun.
the ball for other people to pick up the ball.
Yes. It was fun. There's that reminds me just super quick digression, Casey. Have you heard of Derek Sivers and How to Start a Movement?
Oh, yeah, 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 that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, his super quick talk, just it's just something like that. It's the first follower is always the one that's like that's the brave person to do that, to follow along
Yeah.
with.
Maybe
That,
afterwards, Drew, if you think of it, could you share that to the Slack channel, Devops Columbia?
oh,
I think
absolutely.
I'd love to plug that, and I'll add it to my notes if I can remember to do that too.
I love
That's a
it.
good one. It's a good plug. All right, I'm gonna move forward with our talk. More slides. Thank you all for sharing these stories. That's exactly, you know what I mean by social norm now. Social norm is the psychology word, but it's like things we do at work. Well, right. This is just a homework one. I'm not gonna have us spend time on this one, but at your current company, what's something you'd like to nudge the culture on that you haven't yet? I like to have at least one cultural nudge I'm working on at any given time. Not too much because then I'll get exhausted. If I had 10, I'm revamping everything. I can't do it all at once. I'm going to get really tired. But one, I can do one at a time. And I think you all, ideally, I hope you all can have one too. All right, more content. I'm going to talk about cultural fit. Oh, this is a callback. Yeah, we already talked about this. Cultural fit and the types of company cultures. There's 3 types and those 5 traits that were toxic. Uh, so if you're working in a company that's kind of toxic and terrible, there's a lot of room for change. It might be exhausting. You might not have the energy to revamp an entire toxic company. But hopefully your company is more somewhere in the middle and you can just nudge it a little bit and be happy working there. That's like the happy path, ideally. A little bit to say about energy management, going in a little on this a little bit. All of the advice in the rest of this section is assuming you have time and energy. If you don't have the time or you don't have the energy or both, don't do any of this. Okay. Okay. I'm not expecting everyone to do all this cultural change all at once. It's exhausting. And another thing to help keep you grounded and happy working on this is focusing on what's possible. So if you want to change something, there's like smaller things that are easier to change for one person or your team and teammates. And some things are just really big. Like if it comes down from the C-suite or from the board and they're setting the norms around something, you might not be able to nudge that. So focus on what's possible. I suffer from this one a lot because I zoom out my scope so much and then I get frustrated eventually at every company I get frustrated, it seems like so far, because I zoom out too far. But if I can focus on a smaller group, then I can keep myself happy and effective. Another big concept here is power dynamics. So if you're in a lower power position, like an engineer on the team, then making change is harder. Um, but if you're in a higher power position like the C-suite, you might think, oh, they can make change. They're so powerful. But they have trouble having the right context. So the higher power positions you're in, the less context you have to make good decisions with. The lower power positions, you have trouble making change. Um, so ideally, the people in high power positions, the C-suite and all those, the leadership of the company, I get the context they need, or they let the people with the context have enough power to make changes that make sense. But often they're just disjointed, and the people with change power don't have the context, and then bad things happen. There's like a tipping point when a company is larger than 300 people, somewhere around there. It's like a Dunbar's number kind of thing. When it's too big and you can't know everyone anymore, leadership is disconnected from people on the ground. And the larger a company gets, the wider that gap is, and the worse decisions get made. It's like a sweet spot for companies where it tips. So think about your context, how that might affect you. When you're doing a cultural change, like the examples we said, another advice I have is asking for forgiveness, not for permission. If you say, hey, can I start playing a music video every single Friday, please? I imagine someone's going to say, maybe not. But if you just do it a couple times, everyone loves it, and there's evidence how good it is, you can get stuff to happen way more easily if you just do it. Here's another concept or framework that I came up with. There's PMs, we love having 2 by 2 matrix of everything, put everything on 2 axes, bring some kind of logic and order to the world. So this one is like, for example, am I allowed to or encouraged to or forbidden from playing music videos on Fridays? And then how explicit or implicit is it? So if we know at my company we are forbidden from playing music videos ever, period. It's a very silent, quiet office. Then that would be at the top left, like maybe where A is. A is just like a random point I chose for an example. And let's say I want to make it explicitly encourage we're supposed to do it. Then Sometimes it goes through a path of becoming less explicit. We get the people who say the rule, don't do it, to be more quiet, or we remove it, or like weaken that somehow, and then we can get it through the left to right from being forbidden to being permitted, and then actively encouraged. So another homework is think of your example from earlier, the culture change you want to do, and where on this plot would it be? Are you allowed to do it, or encouraged, or forbidden? Where is it on this x-axis? And then how articulated is that? Is it written to the handbook, very explicit, or is it just like we know that's quietly the norm, the way things are? And then where do you want it to go? So maybe you want it to go through a certain path. I find it's easier to go when it's explicit down to implicit and then over. Because if you're fighting the rule directly and it's a written rule, that's like that's a big barrier there. That's what the curve is here. Just an example curve. All right, so we covered energy management and power dynamics permission. We did the top half here. Next, I'm going to talk about a few more concepts, and then I'll get to the concrete things. Levers of change. When you want to make a certain change, um, there's a lot of ways you can make it happen. I really like this framework, which came from an agricultural scientific paper about cow farts affecting the ozone layer, and things like that, like dairy farming, and how do we help the ozone layer by having less methane gas produced by feeding cows less garbage that makes them produce methane. Like that was like the goal of that paper. And they came up with this cool framework I really like called the reset model. So the stuff in the middle, ignore it for a second. That's like, I don't know, thinking too hard. But the 5 buckets at the bottom I find very useful. So we can make a rule. Don't feed cows garbage. That makes them do that methane farts. Education is another lever that we can do, is like teach farmers when they do that, then this happens. Here is an alternative. This is cheaper. Like you can educate them, and just letting them know about these things can make change happen. A social one is like if we did, imagine a social media campaign targeted at Facebook ads to farmers or however you can reach them. It says like, farmers, good farmers, don't make cows fart too much. Like, or however they're going to get that message across, like social pressure. That's the third lever here. A fourth lever is economics. So if they feed their cows garbage, find them some money, and if they feed them healthier, better things, maybe they have a tax break or whatever, like an economic lever like that. And then T is tools. So maybe it's just hard to manage it. And so if they have like software or spreadsheets or calculating tools, like that's the kind of tool I think of as a software developer. If we give them tools to help them calculate the methane production of their cows or how much money they'd save or the tax break, that kind of thing, that's another lever. And so for your example at work, the cultural change you're thinking about doing at work, you can also think of these 5 levers. So in a tech environment, a rule like a policy that you're supposed to follow in the handbook, education like explaining and doing workshops and having managers talk to their people about why the change might be good. We need team cohesion, and watching a 3-minute video or hearing it in the background is a pretty good and efficient way to do that. And here's a paper about why that's good, and like you can do education as an approach. I think in the music video example, social was pretty good. Social was pretty strong. Like you just did it and people liked it, and the people are saying, "Yes, I want it." Like socially popular. Economics, I don't know that watching the video saves money, but maybe the deploying on Fridays kind of thing. If you make your customers happier over the weekend because it's safe to deploy on Fridays and you want to deploy on Fridays, then you have this many more hours of happy customers, and that might lead to this much. I don't know, like economics, an explanation for that. Or a tools example at work could be making it really easy, making a Slack bot, and you just do slash Katy Perry firework, and then it'll put it on the TV. Like it's very easy for that kind of pattern to go. Or messaging people to go to lunch. So, oh, it's lunch now. Making a calendar event. That's like a tool approach. Um, so I like these 5 buckets to help me brainstorm. More, I don't. The middle is interesting to me. You can read about that later. Read the original paper if you'd like. But the 5 buckets are really helpful for brainstorming ways to make change happen. Reset, or ESET. For the tools, I change it. I also include process. They used the word T because it's a good acronym, but in the paper they also say process. It's just like the way you do things. That helps expand my brainstorming space a little bit. So if you want to use that, you can. All right. Ooh, I feel like reset alone. If I could give a talk on the reset model and apply it to a whole bunch of things, that would be a great talk. That's one I would love to develop someday. All right, my next topic here, gradual change. Change is gradual. You might have seen this like curve of adoption before. It's a pretty common framework in tech. If not, I'll explain it real quick. When the iPhone came out, some people very early on the left here, innovators, got it very early. I had an iPod Touch before I had an iPhone, but like I was the only person with my calendar on a little electronic device when I was in college. And I felt so cool. I didn't have to write it on paper like everybody else. But my mom's best friend neighbor, like an older woman, she does not have a smartphone still. Or she does, but it's in her drawer. She hates it. She doesn't use it. She's using a flip phone. So she's on the very far right end, a laggard. She's not adopting this technology very soon. Most people, though, in the middle of this bell curve, they adopted it when it was popular and cheap, and it hit the markets, and everybody had it, and the phone companies made deals and all that. So there's like a bell curve of adoption. So change happens over time. Not everybody's going to come on board ever, and some people are going to be very early, some people are late. Same happens for at work. If your team is deploying on Fridays now, the other teams might not like it, or your teammates might not like it, and they're not going to be an innovator liking that change or the videos on Fridays. Having lunch. Laggards, like the coworkers who ate smoothies at their desk, they never came to lunch. I never got them to come to lunch. Never, never. So they're definitely in the laggard part if they're ever even going to adopt that change. How about the new people? They would all join me, so they were innovators. Uh, Another takeaway from this part is I think people naturally want to focus on the resistant people and get them on board, but that doesn't work as well. If you can focus on the people who are really bought into it or easily swayed, like you're the new employees, that's great. That'll work. Once I got all the new people on board, they got other people on board and kind of like spread. But if I was really focused on the smoothie coworker, like I was maybe for a week or two, that didn't go anywhere. She never did. So like starting with your allies is a great way to make social change happen. Change happens one step at a time. So for the lunch example, I asked one new person to lunch. I asked the second person to lunch, and the same person a second time, that kind of thing. I repeated it and did it again and again and again. And even when I was tired and didn't feel like having lunch, I thought it was important for the culture of this team and department to do it. So I would make it a priority. And then eventually it became the way we do things. People would have lunch. Of course, they're going to lunch every Wednesday. The whole engineering team would go to lunch, and the PMs who were friendly and didn't stay at their desk, they would all go too. And it became the way we do things. And now I think they still have lunch without me. I quit, but they're still having lunch. I'm so happy for them. So repetition helps. For another example outside of tech, I'm a gay man. My partner Brian and I live together. We just bought a house. So gay marriage is kind of important to me. It's a topic I've been following. And check out this curve from the left, 2000 all the way to 2015. It From 2000 to 2010, it's like flat. It looks so disheartening. Like, okay, one state, fine. But I want all of the states to have legalized gay marriage. Please, come on. And then eventually hit an inflection point. So change can be very slow like this. Is a pretty common pattern for change. So I got one new coworker to have lunch with me, and a second new coworker, and a third. And I don't think I ever got half the team. Like, I don't think it hit an inflection point this dramatic. But slow change, getting faster over time, like exponential curve is pretty common. It's not linear. A lot of change is not linear. All right, for another example, is this is a graph of interracial marriage, which is the red lines, versus same-sex marriage, which is the blue lines. I think it's so interesting. This is the next KCD comic. I think it's so interesting that they're the opposite order. So for interracial marriage, the law changed first, and then the dotted line happened much, much later, where people socially like accepted it. And the 50% line only happened in 1995. That blows my mind still. 50% of the US accepting interracial marriage in 1995. Uh, and it's still not 100%. It's not quite near that. And then the opposite happened for same-sex marriage. So it was popular, like people believed in it before the law, and the law caught up eventually. So both ways happen. Sometimes policy and law and process comes first. Sometimes social pressure and like that kind of thing happens first. Both happen. In a company environment, that means that someone like a CTO, a C-suite person could change a social norm and have like stay at the company interviews instead of exit interviews. They could like make big changes happen. That's kind of top down. That's kind of like the law first approach. Or people could just do it, and an employee could get their coworkers to have lunch or put YouTube videos up. That kind of thing could be grassroots. Both happen. Both are good. Both are valuable tools we have in our toolbox. I touched on this a little bit already. Starting with supporters works a lot better. people who are more likely to accept the change. Start with them and get them to get more people involved. That I need reminding of this all the time because whenever I have opposition to my idea, I want to go to that opposition person and really talk to them and change their mind, but it's often easier to go around them and get rally up support. When you're doing cultural change, like any of the examples we're talking about, you can do it through a whole bunch of mediums. Discussion is maybe my favorite one. Number two, talking to people about it. You can journal and write about it to get your thoughts in order if you want to do that first. You can share videos, books, podcasts, and articles to your coworkers. Hey, this company started doing deploys on Fridays that were safe and it was better for the customers and da 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 da. Check out this article, this podcast. Let's watch this video together on Friday. Anyone who's free. You can get like change to happen by leaning on any different medium, all of these different types of content to get information going through. Discussion groups I really like. One-on-one chats are really good. You can do any of those with yourself, like you can journal with yourself or listen to podcasts to get your own thoughts in order. You can have a one-on-one chat with one coworker. You could have a group, like, hey, say, Emil, Slack message the entire engineering team and say, hey, entire team, I'm doing a book club on this book, which is very related to all the work that we do. Please come join me. And if you do that, maybe ping some individuals too and say, I think you in particular would like it. And then you'll really get people. Maybe if you do both, it's the 1-2 punch of recruiting people, public-private punch. Uh, Sometimes you can get everyone on the team to do it if it's like a standard training everyone's expected to do, or like a big, um, I don't know, an online train. I don't like the online training platforms with just slides, but there are effective trainings you can do with people that are more interactive. All right, so that's like how this kind of change can happen on any of these forums and any of these audiences. You can pick whoever you think is going to be effective, whatever you're able to do. Think broadly. I'm trying to get you to think broadly. You can be very strategic. Once you decide you want to make a cultural change happen, you can come up with ways to make it happen. Right, how do we make it stick? So let's say you came up with something like the kudos cards, and while you're there, it happens, but when you leave, maybe it stops. Uh, One thing is sharing your results. Actually, I want to go back to like the lunch example from my job. So had lunch with one person, and then while we were at lunch, I learned that the other team needed this thing, and I would share that like, I'm so glad I had lunch with this person because otherwise this team wouldn't have known about our API docs that we had hidden somewhere, and like something big businessy that people liked. And then every time I had lunch and something came up, I'd say, I'm so glad I had lunch with people because other great things happened. And the more I did it, the more I'd say, yeah, we have to have lunch with each other. Of course. Remember that other thing, that other thing? It's important for business for us to have lunch together. And we had more and more people bought into it. Even the resistant people were like, yeah, fine, fine. I guess it was useful a little bit. It's like sharing your results is pretty powerful. Um, and then once you have a track record of doing change in general, then you have more trust from people to try things. So if you had lunch success all the time, and then you want to do videos on Fridays, that kind of thing, people will say, okay, well, Casey's lunch idea was pretty good. I guess I won't complain as loudly because I don't want to be such a stinker. So you get more trust from people who support you or less resistance from people who resist you, the more you make successful change happen at the company. Um, Sometimes change is so slow, like the gay marriage graph looking flat a lot of the time. And so I want to celebrate when one state changed. I want to celebrate that very loudly as much as I can, announcing it at meetings and emailing people and putting on Slack and talking about it all the time. So when a small change is happening, people are aware of it and it's not seen as a loss, it's progress toward this cultural change goal. Uh, and in the moment, it can be hard to share these kinds of things because you might not feel like it's as fast as you want it to go, or it's not as big of a change as you were wishing you had. But celebrating whatever progress you have will accelerate the rate of change for this change you're advocating for. Uh, how do you make changes last beyond you? I like to train the next person to do it or stop doing it and then people love it and then they want to pick it up. Like I'll make really good notes and I'll tap somebody, hey, could you run the meeting while I'm out next week? And so like my product manager community practice I started at the government is still going, I think, last I checked, because I had trained other people to run it. I told them how I was doing it and why, and I was like, you do it. I'm not trying to be a micromanager here. Thank you. Great, go for it. And so now it's survived past me, thank goodness. All right, that's all my big concepts. Now I want to go through a whole bunch of concrete actions. Very intentionally, this is a very fast section. because it's really like just getting you thinking broadly, and you can brainstorm on your own later what's going to be most applicable to you. I have these in themes on the left and ideas on the right. I'm going to go rapid fire through here. You could be the heart of the team. You could be super actively friendly to everybody, aggressively friendly, like I like to be welcoming to the new people. You can make it really easy for people to approach you. Like I like to have a personal readme in my Slack bio. Oh, who am I? Here, read about me. I play instruments. La la la. Please talk to me. I'm very friendly. You could be a very part of the team person. You could be a process before. Oh, sometimes there's a problem where there's people before process is good, process before people is bad, generally. Um, what am I saying? I don't know. I don't know this theme. Sorry, everybody. Okay. You can influence your local bubble, focus on your small team that you're working with, or just the engineers, and forget the product managers for now. Influence the small bubble. You can prioritize what to focus on. So make sure you're spending your energy wisely on things that you can control and you might have influence over. Sometimes there's a dumb rule around that it's like we should be able to deploy on Fridays at this company because it's safe and da 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 da. And it wasn't safe 5 years ago, and we're so much safer now. It's so dumb. But you can advocate for concrete alternatives and make it very concrete, not just say bad, 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 but say, let's try this instead.
These sound like great ways to combat process before people mentality, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the problem, and these will combat it. Thank you, Drew. Good recovery. Here's a psychology word I love, propinquity, which is also known as the water cooler effect. The more you interact with people and around people and see people, the closer you feel to them and the more you trust them. So I like to have social chat rooms at work. I have a whole like Twitter thread of like literally 20 channels that have people chatting with each other in a friendly, coworker-y way. Hi is a good one. All you're allowed to do is say hi. All is good. You post cute animal photos, and it's a whole bunch of those I have linked to in the notes. You can have social events like Jackbox games, like an online game night, or just chatting online. GatherTown is a good platform if you haven't tried it. Affinity groups, like I like to join the queer people affinity group at work or make one if there isn't one yet, and then I can bond with those coworkers. Gaming, video games I like to do. Especially if you're online at a remote company, you need more propinquity with your coworkers because you don't have an in-person water cooler. You need to have all of these things lined up to be a really cohesive team. Another thing I like is retros. A lot of teams have it weekly for their small team, like their team of like 6 developers. That's cool. But I like the larger monthly ones too, for the team of teams, those 30 people. Retros. All right, spreading awareness of things. When you're working on projects, people usually don't know about it if you don't tell them. How are they going to know you deployed that cool feature? I like to have a demo days, but if your company doesn't do a demo day yet for engineering, you could just do one for your team and whoever is interested and invite all of engineering very politely, and that can get demo days going and started, even if it doesn't have buy-in from the top. A team could make a demo day happen. And then another idea I have is an inverted demo day. You want to know what another team's doing because you're depending on their API for your project. Get them to do a demo day and invite your team, and you can invite all of everybody else too, and it can be a bigger thing. Like you're allowed to do that as an IC at most companies. It's just not encouraged. You're just permitted to. All right, more one-on-ones are really important in a remote team. Of course, your manager and direct report, they have them most often. You could do skip level ones and tell them, we should have a skip level, which is a term you know, of course. And a lot of managers will say, yes, of course I am Googling it right now. And then they'll say, oh, yes, a skip level. I'll do that with you. And then you can talk to your boss's boss. That word is very powerful. Have one-on-ones with your teammates if you don't yet, peers in your role, like other engineers in other departments, or other departments that you're not in. Talk to the PMs or designers. And then random one-on-ones, I love doing those at companies. Like donut chats will pair two employees randomly through the company. These one-on-ones really increase team cohesion and make this kind of change happen. You can ask for support from all these people, not just your manager, your peers, other people in different roles, people across the company, and that will increase your social bonds too. You can offer support to them proactively. Hey, you seem stressed lately. I'd love to talk to you about it if it would help. I used to do da 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 da. You can be very supportive. Be proactively supportive. Be that heart of the team to any of those people. Celebrations is a great one to make the culture better. Kudos channel, I love those. The cards is a great idea. I like to share release notes somewhere publicly to be celebrated. Not that the people on other teams need to know every API change, but like this was a hard one and we did it. Like I love to celebrate those somewhere. Um, and demo day presentations, town halls, great place to celebrate things. How can you encourage sharing So when someone is working on a problem and they don't share it, there's probably good reasons why they're not. Nobody seems interested. There's no venue for it, that kind of thing. You can encourage that by when someone brings up something or has an interesting point of view. I like this phrase is awkward, but you can say, "What do you mean? Tell me more." And that is actually super effective at getting people to open up and share, just showing your curiosity. Validation is a big idea. I talk about a lot. I'm gonna go, oh man, so many more. I never thought I'd get through all of these anyway, but they're all in the doc for the homework. People are too focused on the rules sometimes. Inclusion topics, you can make your company better by increasing inclusion, social norms, communication, being involved earlier in the process. This is great for getting the PMs, PRDs earlier, get them involved early, get the engineering folks involved with product earlier. Empowerment. We're going to be able to chat afterwards too, but I want to give you a couple of wrap-up slides. For homework, I hope you look through this long list in the doc and come up with some ideas of things you'd change and how you'd change them. That's your homework. I'm doing an online course for debugging your brain where you get to talk with peers about all the concepts in the book, like how do you deal with a stressful experience when you have something you're thinking about over and over and over and it's stressful and you want to get through it. You can, there's a whole bunch of techniques that I read about in the book, kind of behavioral therapy techniques and talking to peers and all that. The course is covering that. That's coming up mid-February. I also offer career coaching of the style where I pull out a whole big matrix like I was showing you earlier, but for your career options, I do that for people a lot. And I have a sliding scale. So if you don't make as much money lately, maybe you're out of work, you don't get charged as much. If you want a workshop for your company, through my company, I have like 30 different workshops on different topics. I love teaching. You can have a discount if you mentioned that you saw this talk here today. Happy to give your company a discount on that. And if you have any other community groups or meetups, I'm happy to give this talk or a similar talk to another group. Let me know if you know of any others you're in. We're done. And we're going to hang around and chat afterwards once we stop the recording. Thank you all for this whirlwind of a presentation. I hope you learned about the existence of 30 concepts. That was my goal.
Thanks so much, man. This was awesome. Yeah, everyone, this is a high watermark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.